Hello there, you're watching The Pulse on the JoyNews channel. This afternoon, Parliament is set to investigate the National Cathedral project as Speaker admits motion. And this afternoon, we have a conversation with some of the MPs on the latest happening on the floor of Parliament. We'll get the details as to why the Speaker is admitting the concerns of the minority. A little later as well, the cyber fraud issues are becoming a norm here in the country. This afternoon, we are having a conversation about the clampdown from the police service and other institutions in the state that are working to deal with the matter. And we hear from the NDC flag bearer hopeful, Dr. Kwabena Dufo, on happenings to the Ghanaian economy. Well, he's promising to fix them once he gets the nod as the leader of the NDC and eventually the leader of the country. We'll bring you that interview here on The Pulse. I'm blessed Sogah. Don't forget that The Pulse, as always, is brought to you by Global Communities, digging in Lu Affordable Safe Sanitation. We're on DSTV channel 421, GoTV channel 144. This is The Pulse. We're back with details. Please stay. We're off to Parliament now because there's a developing story that we're watching for you. Speaker of Parliament Alban Bagbin has admitted two crucial motions filed by the minority. First, the minority wants the Finance Minister, Ken Ofori-Atta, to present for approval government's debt restructuring program. The second motion wants Parliament to conduct an investigation into the National Cathedral-related controversies. This wrapped up a very busy week in Parliament where, of course, the EC chairperson and the NIA executives and the Finance Minister have all made appearances before the MPs. But let's get a better understanding of events unfolding in the House now. Kweku Asante is our parliamentary correspondent. Very shortly, we'll hear from some of the MPs as to what they feel about this latest directive from the Speaker. But Kweku, explain to us two issues before the Speaker, and he's admitted all of them. Let's start off with the issues surrounding the Finance Minister. Exactly what's the demand of the minority?
So, Blessed, about 2 weeks ago, Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta came before Parliament to provide an update on government's debt exchange program. We know that government has determined, the World Bank and other multilateral donors have all determined that Ghana's debt is currently unsustainable, way beyond 100% in terms of the debt to GDP ratio. So, Finance Minister had announced in the 2023 budget that government was going to undertake some debt operation, which culminated into the debt restructuring program, which has been undertaken for some time now. The deadline just 2 weeks ago or so. So the Finance Minister was in Parliament, briefed MPs as to what exactly they were doing to bring the debt level to sustainable levels. The minority on that day indicated that they were not so satisfied with the answers, but because the minister came by way of a statement, they could not do much because statements are not supposed to evoke debate, among other things, as per the standing orders of Parliament. And so the minority indicated, Mahama in particular, was on that floor of the Parliament that day, making the point that specifically Parliament has to approve the specifics of the debt exchange program because they amounted to borrowing, among other things. So that was the point they made at the time. And then the majority side said that no such thing should happen, and it went on and on for some time. So the minority side led by Dr. Kisila Tufo, Gavin Kwame Agbodza, Mahama Yariga, Isaac Adongo, and Roxanne Nelson Eche Tafiamepo filed this private members' motion calling on the Speaker of Parliament to admit it, and if it goes through, the Finance Minister will be required to put before Parliament the full details of the debt exchange program, both local and external, for approval, because in the estimation of the minority, the government must come by way and seek an approval from Parliament before it could go ahead and do that. Of course, the majority side disagree, government disagree, but the Speaker has admitted this motion, and if it succeeds, the Finance Minister will be ordered to put before Parliament this particular exchange program for approval.
Okay. Beyond that, we know that the Finance Minister was expected to appear before the House today to answer a number of issues that are already on the minds of the MPs, but he failed to show up. Any explanations for that?
So last week, this week Tuesday was when he was originally scheduled to answer those questions. I think Wednesday instead, he wrote to the Speaker of Parliament that he was meeting China, the delegation from China, of our government's external debt restructuring program. So he did so. wrote to the Speaker. Because of that, he wasn't going to come on Wednesday. He expected to appear before Parliament on Friday to answer those questions. But when we came before Parliament today, the other paper did not have any of the questions that had originally been advertised to be answered by Ken Ofori-Atta. The explanation was that the questions had been rescheduled. Later on, the Finance Minister actually came in before Parliament, but with the explanation that he was not coming to answer the questions. He was only coming because sometimes MPs have raised concerns that he must be around, and because of that, he came around.
Okay.
But did not answer the questions that was originally scheduled for him.
So the understanding is that this would happen at a later time?
Yes, the understanding is that next week, the Finance Minister will be programmed to answer some of these questions that the minority have put before.
Okay, so let's deal with the issue of the National Cathedral and why that is coming up now.
So someone of Blakwa, who has been leading the minority in making these claims about the National Cathedral, have said that there are a number of government expenditures, there are a number of things that have happened around the National Cathedral project, which must be investigated because government has expended some amounts of money. And so he, together with Dr. Kisela Tufosen, Ivanolama Kupipwa, Government Kwame Abuja, Dr. Dominic Ayene, and Helen Adwan to file this private members' motion as well, seeking an investigation. So Parliament, they want Parliament to constitute an investigative committee to look into all the National Cathedral-related matters. The Speaker of Parliament has also admitted this already. Samuel Okudzeto Ablakwa is signaling victory. He says that this is victory for accountability, and they'll be expecting that if this motion goes through, some key members will put before a committee to probe these matters.
But then, I mean, the feeling is that this issue came up at the time we're hearing the impeachment proceedings against the finance minister, for instance. Is it the estimation of the Speaker that matters were not exhaustive enough, a reason for which we are revisiting what's being described now by some as an age-old problem? So
the Sogah matter dealt mainly on Ken Ofori-Atta and whether or not he was fit to hold office. Of course, part of the grounds on which the minority sought to remove him from office was that he had unconstitutionally expended money for the National Cathedral project. It appears that the minority were not so happy with the answers that the finance minister gave, but also because the specific issues that were being dealt with at the time had to do with the finance minister as a whole, and the National Cathedral matters came as a subset. So they are not so happy with some of the answers the finance minister provided. They actually believe that, of course, Ken Ofori-Atta's lawyers at the committee level raised matters that if he says something is unconstitutional, you don't do that in Parliament. In the Supreme Court rule, they are the only persons clad with the power to be able to declare actions of governmental agencies as unconstitutional. And so they wanted that part of the motion to be struck out. And at some point, they were stood down. So the minority say that we need to have an investigation that focuses and narrows down on the National Cathedral project. We know that already more than 390 million Ghana cedis have been expended so far. They say that what the president said was that government was only going to pay what they call the seed money. That the amount.
Hello there, Kweku.
Should go to the bottom of this matter. And that this investigation should go to the bottom of this matter to be able to resolve some of these issues. And so next week or the ensuing weeks, if this motion goes through, there will be a vote, there will be a debate. If the minority are able to get the numbers and they win the debate on the motion, a committee will be
okay, just provide a bit of clarity for us on that issue. What would it then require now to have that go through?
So when this eventually is scheduled for debate on the floor, the minority will move their motion, somehow second it. It will be debated on both sides of the House. Then it will come down to a vote. Normally a voice vote, and if either side are not satisfied, a head count or a division. It goes on and on. And so at the end of the day, there will be a vote on and carries the vote will now get it say. So the minority are able to have their way when the votes come down. Then the Speaker of Parliament will constitute a committee, either an ad hoc committee or maybe refer to some of the standing or select committees. But the wording of the committee of this motion suggests that the minority wants an ad hoc committee. So an ad hoc committee of the form will be set. They will receive memoranda. They will hear from witnesses, and and ultimately they will report back to the House as to what exactly their findings were. But the minority, I mean, from all that we are seeing so far, are looking at a certain political angle. They want this to go on and on. They want the public to know about some of the expenditures that have been made so far, which they say are not only unconstitutional, but points to a bigger case of government that's managing state resources.
Cool. I'm grateful. But just before you go, I understand that the majority side has been reacting to this. They're not too enthused about what's happening.
Indeed, yes. We heard first from the Honorable Sogah, the MP for English, Botiano, among them. He says that this motion has come as a surprise. It seems like it's an ambush and that they are not so satisfied with it. The Speaker did not respond to those specific issues that he had. The minority leader did. But the Speaker will be at pain to explain that as Speaker of Parliament, he has the liberty to admit motions if he meets certain criteria. And once that is done, there will be no more questions.
Well, thanks, Kweku, for joining us. In fact, there's a lot more happening on this. We'll hear the minority side of the story when we return from this break. Kweku Rikitegan is my guest here on The Pulse. We're speaking to him in a jiffy. We're back. Now, fetching water with a basket sounds like a fruitless and an unintelligent thing to do. But can you believe that this is very possible? In our Ghana Month series today, Kojo Yankson takes you to Adan to, of course, witness the traditional priests who are able to fetch water without it dropping in a basket.
The world turned its eyes on Adan this year as their annual Asafotufiami festival drew tourists and visitors from across the globe. This cultural extravaganza commemorates the numerous military victories chalked up throughout history by the ancestral people of the Adan Kingdom. We are here for the first time to experience it all for ourselves. The loud rhythmic drumming and the bright red clothing, the unceremonious loud bark of the muskets and the heady mixed aroma of gunpowder and goat kebab leaves one in no doubt whatsoever that you are at a festival. One by one, the clans line up on either side of the road. The second half of today's ceremony takes place on the riverbank. This is where the whole Adan township follows their traditional leaders to the waterfront to thank the gods for victory and to cleanse their bodies after the bloody battle. Crowds are so large that a whole contingent of regular and marine police are working together to control crowds by land and by water.
That's a basket. Now, that man, that priest, is going to use the basket to fetch water from the river. And the water will not spill. I don't know if you can see. All right? See, that's a basket full of water that's not spilling. All right? Now they're going to carry that basket back, and then some of the leaders are going to drink from it. But as you can see, the water is not spilling from the basket.
And this is how the Asafotufiami ceremony comes to an end. A beautiful cultural moment lovingly recreated in this quiet riverside town. It really was worth the trip. I want to see you there next year, okay?
Amazing sights and sounds there, but I hope you don't try this at home. But anyway, let's get back to our top story, talking about what's happening in Parliament. The Speaker of the House admitting questions and possibly an interrogation into the National Cathedral and some other matters relating to the domestic debt exchange. We're being joined in studio now by former Deputy Finance Minister, Judge Gukure-Kitegan, who's joining us in studio. Good afternoon, sir. Welcome to the Pulse.
Afternoon.
I see that you showed up a bit late, but your reason is very tangible, I must say. You're saying that, well, you don't want to miss any moment where, of course, the CI from the EC could be late.
Absolutely.
Why are you scared about that?
Well, I mean, the way they are behaving, you know, with this whole, and by that I mean the government behaving about this whole CI in conjunction with the Electoral Commission. We had what they call a committee on the whole, and it was more or less beyond reasonable doubt that they intend to do it.
So anything can happen at any time?
We intend to prevent them, and we need to be sure that from the blow of the whistle to when the game ends, we are actually there to see that it doesn't.
Is this intelligence that you're picking up from your colleagues that they want to do something fishy about the CI?
Well, not so much of intelligence, but so much of lack of trust for our opponents, or lack of trust for government. You know, you cannot trust them. What they say they won't do, that's what they do. What they say they will do, that's not what they do. So you can never trust them. So you have to keep your eye on the ball and be on your toes.
Okay, but then today, the Speaker of the House clearly giving you a leeway as the minority to look at some issues relating to the debt exchange program. And many are wondering, well, we all thought it was a successful program. The Finance Minister says it was a voluntary exercise. He's describing it as very successful. So why do we still have to ask questions about the debt exchange, for instance?
Thank you very much. The way this whole debt exchange thing has actually been managed by government, it's been a mess. And, from what they came up with the last time around, this is the report of the Finance Minister.
Okay, what you're holding now is what the Finance Minister briefed the House with.
Yeah,
okay,
absolutely. Right. On the 16th of February, I believe. And you realize that things don't even add up. It doesn't. If you really grill it down, you realize that things basically doesn't add up. And I've just been going through it. I was actually away when this was done.
Right.
So when I came in, I was trying to go through the numbers, and I realized that, look, this thing is all over the place. So from what the speaker is saying, it's actually important that we look at this carefully. Other than that, we are going to end up with something that will be a disaster.
What's top on the agenda for you as the minority? What questions are you raising about the process?
For me, and I say for me, from what I have gathered, which I'm obviously yet to share with, you know, there are a lot of things, we found out a lot of challenges with this. But for me, the first question even becomes, you know, when you look in the budget of 2023, on page 35, our external debt is supposed to be 28 billion US dollars. Okay, that will not change. It's the CD component that changes because of the exchange rate losses. Right. But since it's an external debt that is in dollars, that wouldn't change very much. So now, I'm not even quite sure what our external debt is now, because the numbers I'm seeing looks completely different. Because the Eurobond that we have in existence is about 14 billion. Okay, so if you so if you take that $14 billion out of the 28 billion, you know, you get around 14 billion again. Right. When I look at what has been settled, because the Eurobond that settled last year in September was a 750 million Eurobond that was taken under the NDC, which has settled. Okay. So even if you take that out, the number we are looking at is about 13.65. Now, a few days ago, the finance minister, when the Chinese Exim Bank came, the finance minister was saying, look, the elephant in the room is China. And this is a government or a party that has elephant as its symbol and doesn't seem to even recognize how an elephant looks like. Because the elephant in the room is definitely not China.
Why so? Because at least that's what we've been made to believe.
Yes.
The fact that they own, I mean, about a third of Ghana's external debts. Speaking about China. So if that's what we publicly know, why are you contending the figures?
Well, what they are telling us, unless we are getting different figures here, I understand the debt we owe to China to be around 2 billion. 2 billion. Right. Now, I'm telling you that if you take the Eurobond of 14 billion out of the existing 28, which they publish in the budget, what you are left with, if you take the Eurobond that also matured last year, there are 2 Eurobonds. One matured last year, September. Right. The next one, which is $1 billion, also taken on the NDC, will also mature this year in August. So we're not even talking about that one, but you're talking about the 750. The figure I'm left with is 13.65 billion. So somebody will have to explain to us how they arrive at what you're talking about. So I really don't. I don't trust the numbers that, you know.
But what do you suspect? What do you suspect this 13 billion that you're talking about has been?
From what I read, and it's not from basically from the media,
right?
And I'm yet to see the actual numbers or what has been sent to the IMF. I read something like the Paris Club, we owe them about 4 billion or something, and 1.7 of this money is supposed to be the money we owe to China. Right. And I'm like, that's not enough. Because what I can see since the budget was read, where we had 28 billion till now, the only thing that has come off in terms of a major maturity is the bond that was meant to settle in in September of last year. So if that is taken out, then the numbers that are being presented to us, to me, doesn't look accurate.
So government would have to account, and this is per your calculation. Yes, government would have to account for about some 13.65.
Of course, yes. Of course, certain things might have settled. You know, certain maybe bilateral or multilateral debt. You know, but I don't know those numbers yet. So I need to find out. But it wouldn't be in a quantum that would have taken 10 billion, which means we paid about 10 billion of our debt.
But where do you situate the domestic debt exchange in all of this?
Well, first of all, let's look at this. Let's look at it this way. I was talking to you even before. I had a concern with the numbers that have been given to us. But let's situate this in the domestic.
Yes, precisely, because you would obviously take your argument to that side. Yes.
On the domestic issue, so I probably should have started from the domestic and come to, I have two concerns here.
Right.
Now, what I'm looking at the moment is that the eligible bonds for tendering that we were told from the beginning of all this debt exchange was 137 billion.
Right.
That's what we were told. Now, this 137 billion did not include individual bonds, because initially individual bonds were not included in this 137 billion, but pension funds were.
Okay.
Now, as a result of what happened, with the demonstrations and all that, they decided to take the pensions out. The pension fund is about 27.5 billion. So if you take that out, you have around 110. If they had just taken the pensions out, not touched the individual bonds, and just gone with the 110, they would have secured 80%. Because 110 out of 137 billion is 80%, which is what they were looking for. They had to harass pensioners, harass individual bondholders, cause a lot of anxiety, petitions, demonstrations here and there, only to achieve what they claim is 85%.
Right.
Now, when I look at the 85%, the question I ask myself, what have they been able to, I'm looking at time value, what have they been able to add? With all these circles that they've gone, they've only added 5%.
And that was after the revision, when the finance minister revised the number of years and also brought the coupon rate to 5. Right? That's what you're speaking about.
Now, the issue then becomes, okay, you say that the pension funds and the individual bondholders can do it voluntarily if they want.
Yes.
Okay, so now those we have in terms of the tendering is mainly the institutional investors, excluding the pension fund, that is the banks, the insurance companies and all that. Now, when you look at that number, you realize that if you look at what is outstanding, the bonds as I told you is 15.5 billion. That is, when you look at the individual bonds that are invested in the fixed income, and then those that are taking, what is it called, the collective schemes. There are two types of individual bonds. Those in collective schemes, which is the fixed income fund, and those that are directly done by the bondholders, themselves. When you put the two together, that is what gives you your 15.5 billion. So I said, okay, let me add 15.5 billion to the 27.5 billion, which is the pension. That gives you 43 billion. So 43 billion is supposed to be voluntary. As I told you, I would have gotten 80% just by excluding these guys in the first place. So if you've been able to attain an extra 5%, this is basic mathematics, right, you realize that with the 43 billion that is outstanding, which is supposed to be voluntary, only 2.1 billion signed up. That is 5% of what is really the people they harassed. Only 5% of them signed up, which means that they didn't achieve anything, right, basically. So this is my concern. Why they've done all this, they wasted so much time, got a lot of downgrading and a whole lot. So to me, it seems as if they don't really know what they're doing.
But are we not over this? Because one would say that the finance minister has completed the process. It was voluntary, as the finance minister pointed out. Now we're moving into a phase where we're supposed to be focusing on the external debt exchange. And yet,
that's where I started.
And yet, and yet the belief is that you're drawing us back by this parliamentary process that you're asking for. Well, mind you, government is working with that timeline. They want the funds, the IMF bailout cash, to hit our accounts by the first quarter of this year. Yeah. You may derail that process, you agree?
Well, you see, because we work with laws in this country, and the right thing must be done. Because this sets a precedence for anything done in the future. And that whether you are doing something monumental as debt exchange should actually come to the House or not. And I see why it shouldn't come to the House. Because the fact that you have put a one line in the budget to say that you do debt exchange does not mean you can go out and do all these complicated things, which are legal things, and therefore must be subjected to the law. Otherwise, you're doing this thing unlawfully. Now, that's one.
Okay.
The second bit is that if you say that you are going to talk to China, for instance, because China has a bulk of, first of all, they put the external one on suspension. Then all of a sudden, they go and say, oh, we are talking to the Paris Club, and for that, we are going to talk to China, because China is the big thing in the room. And as I was telling you, China isn't. Because if what they are telling us is true, that we only owe China about 2 billion, even that 2 billion, if it includes the Sino-Hydro stuff, we were supposed to pay that it was supposed to be about a trade.
But in terms of the individual creditors, you agree that they hold the highest chunk. I mean, that's a fact. Looking at the amount they hold out of the 5 billion that we're talking about in terms of the external debt.
And I'm telling you that 5 billion is not correct. It can't be.
Are you the one challenging the figures? Or you?
Yes, I am challenging the figures. I'm just looking at the figures and I'm challenging them. So this is something that I'm going to come up with to, if you like, not to start the process, but to actually let them understand that if you're talking about the elephant in the room, and therefore you are prioritizing who you tackle first because of size, then China isn't. So you're just wasting your time with China, unless, of course, there's an ulterior motive why you've gone to China. And that's what I believe. Because the motive here is that at the moment you cannot get money from anywhere. China is the likely source where they are a bit lenient and may offer you some money. So you are trying to go there and see whether you can use your 1.7 that you owe them to really do some structuring and get some more money. Other than that, you will go and tackle your external, you go and tackle your Eurobond, which is almost about 14 billion.
But we've heard from, for instance, from the German ambassador indicate that the elephant in the room, and I'm repeating his words, in his view, is China, because the G20 group believes that once China is out of the way, they'll be willing to, of course, restructure our debt and then credit us with the IMF austerity.
Then maybe he's talking about the big elephant in the room with reference to the Paris Club, not reference to the external debt in its entirety. Because as I'm telling you, 14 billion of the external debt is not a Paris Club. That's Eurobond in the capital market. And that is the elephant. That's where we are getting our downgrading and everything from. You are not being downgraded by China or downgraded by the Paris Club. The people who are downgrading you, making your situation worse, making your bond junk, are the people you should be tackling. The two problems with our debt was, when you look at the domestic debt was ballooning as a result of high interest cost. Because as inflation is going up, interest cost or interest rate cost was also going up. When you come on the external side, it is the exchange rate. As the cedi depreciates, the cedi component of your external debt also increases, as they quoted in the budget, about 93 billion. Right. So if you have something to tackle, you want to tackle the two things that are incurring debt without actually borrowing. Because interest cost is an additional cost to your debt, which you are not actually borrowing any money from. The same with the external. So you want to go to people who are downgrading you, because if you go there and sort it out, the Paris Club, the Chinese and all that will look at your ratings favorably, and then you can sit at the table and have a better negotiation.
Is it your suspicion that someone is benefiting from this Eurobond, a reason for which you want a forensic audit into it? Because we've heard the narrative from the minority before, and it appears that's where your argument is leading us to again.
I have said this, many times, and just coming to open up, anything. But unfortunately, I felt that we could have nailed the finance minister on this. Unfortunately, I didn't get the opportunity to do it.
So this is all about Ken. This is all about Ken Ofori-Atta once again.
Ken Ofori-Atta must go. Ken Ofori-Atta is part of the problems we are facing. He is not the person who will provide solutions. He's just making things worse. He's out of his depth with this. He doesn't understand exactly what he's doing now or where he is. When I look at the numbers, this is what I see. And it is very clear that this guy hasn't got a clue what he's doing. Why would you waste them as much time as they have in trying to harass pensioners, including the Chief Justice, former Chief Justice, individual bondholders, only to get 5% of what they are holding.
Because is it fair to say that all you're seeking to do as the minority is to find a backdoor to reintroduce what you failed at doing when you commenced some impeachment hearings against Ken Ofori-Atta?
Well, why are we talking about all these numbers? It's because of one man. So if we want to solve the problem, we have to solve the problem from source, not by trying to solve the problem from where, we are not looking, we're looking at basically what caused the problem. So if Ken Ofori-Atta goes, and I feel strongly about it, and I'm disappointed that I didn't get an opportunity to bring out the things that, that because of what happens when we were in the plenary, and obviously the leadership took a different decision as to how the debate will be conducted. And for some reason, I was out of that debate.
So, aside Ken, there are other people that you could be holding to account. And you're failing to do that, then you're being fixated on one man. Some say, well, he's an appointee, don't forget. He's working for an individual who's at the top there, who you could equally face as Parliament and ask some other questions aside being fixated on Ken Ofori-Atta. And so what problem will be solved, for instance, if Ken Ofori-Atta is taken out of the office? Because the debt will still be there, by the way. The figures you're looking at will still be there.
Obviously, the people we are negotiating with will obviously begin to get some confidence. The market will begin to get some confidence. Look, we are looking at Ken Ofori-Atta's absence, signaling to the market that Ghana finally is serious about doing this debt exchange. Is serious about the IMF program. Because you're dealing with a man who said that we are not going to IMF. How can you trust such a man to sit down and negotiate with? He doesn't believe in what you are negotiating, with him. He doesn't believe in it. So that's the problem I have. From the very onset, I felt that Ken Ofori-Atta should not be the one to go to Washington to do this. Ken Ofori-Atta should not be the one to go to, the other places he's been going. Because he doesn't believe in the things that he's doing. If you look in recent history, all the prime ministers, with the exception of maybe Boris Johnson, who did not believe in Brexit, could not carry it through because they simply did not believe in what has been given to them.
Are you accusing Ken of intentionally stifling our IMF program?
He doesn't believe in it. So he might not be doing it intentionally. If he's doing it intentionally, probably will be better than somebody who is doing something that he doesn't want to know. He doesn't either understand, doesn't want to know, he's not interested. So if he's doing it deliberately, you can even look at what he's doing. He's just simply not interested. He wished he hadn't gone to the IMF. I mean, I think that is clear. Ken Ofori-Atta's wish was that Ghana did not go to IMF. He said it, we are a proud nation. So he feels humiliated sitting with his negotiators. That you said you're not going to come here, you're sitting here, you're a proud nation. Have you stopped being proud? This is the situation that this man is suffering from. He cannot relieve himself of that duty. Somebody should do it for him.
Okay. You'd be facing another task of the other side. They've told you that, well, even if Ken has to go, the decision has to be made by the president. Okay. Now that the speaker has granted this opportunity to the minority again, what will be different?
Well, we'll have to go to the drawing board and look at how we can tackle this thing again properly with some of the information that some of us have and bring it to the table. We are part of the financial advisors to the minority. So whatever we have, we will put it together as a team and look at where we see the problems. Because the problems are all littered, but they need to be put together. And I think that we need to actually sit down and put together. If you put it together and you look at what I'm telling you, this whole thing is a mess. I mean, they are telling you that since they did the voluntary exercise, they have been able to get 85%. And I'm telling you that after all this while, after all the mess they have created, that only generated 5%. When I look at the 5% in nominal terms, by putting the pension funds together with the individual bondholders, which comes to 43 billion, that figure, that 5% is only 2.15 billion. And that's a complete waste of time. Everybody's time. And that is why we are being there. Because the rating agencies, first of all, are looking at the mess we are creating with domestic bond and sees us as incompetent, and that we will not be able to do any better negotiation on the external side, okay, where you'll be dealing with seasoned negotiators.
Okay, the debt relief is not the only item on the table as we speak, because what's equally there is the National Cathedral.
Yeah.
The Speaker admitting that jointly.
Yeah.
How is that a drain, and what are you seeking to, of course, find out from the Finance Minister?
Well, there has to be some finality into how this whole thing is going to be done. With a deception around it, again, this is an issue of trust, where we can't trust this government. With the whole deception around this, government needs to even tell us, even if it's not taking government money again, to tell us where the money for the cathedral is going to come from. Because one day, we'll be sitting here and some drug baron will come to us and say that they funded the cathedral. You know, so at the moment, I mean, I was part of the committee who looked at the 80 million that was put in the tourism to fund the cathedral. Mm-hmm. I had always said, if we were really going to build a cathedral, looking at the tourism aspect of it, probably is the right place for it to go on the tourism. That should have been done at the very onset, with clarity that this is what we're doing. The cathedral is going to be a tourism, it will generate a tourism revenue, and for that matter, we are putting it here and we are spending this money to do it. Even if the country is not in a position to do so, this is how we are going to stagger it and do it. They didn't do that. It was going to be funded. It was one man's dream or his conversation with God. Then and now it's become something hanging around the neck of the nation in the times that we are in. And I think that's unfair to them.
Is there a question that Ken Ofori-Atta has not answered about the National Cathedral?
Loads. I think there are loads of questions that they haven't answered. I mean, as the principal financial advisor to the government, you would have thought that you will have a clear roadmap on where the resources for the cathedral is going to come from.
But he's told you.
He's taking money from
seed money, contingency.
I mean,
beyond that, the Christendom is supposed to fund the rest.
He's doing what is not in the Financial Management Act. You don't take seed money or whatever it is from the contingency vote or the contingency fund to fund such a project which is known. I mean, it is not a project.
But Ken then comes in and says, well, you are members of parliament. You agreed that I spend that money, and that's what I'm spending. Well, you're part of the problem, isn't it?
Well, it was when he came back. Nobody knew he was taking money from the contingency fund to fund the cathedral. It was when he was called to come and answer questions. That is where we got to know where the money was coming.
Yeah, but you approved the budget for him.
Well, we approved the budget for him. We did not approve for him to go and take money from the contingency fund or contingency vault to go and pay for the cathedral. That was not part of the deal. It wasn't part of the deal. That's not what we put that money there for. In fact, the cathedral was known, and they claim they've done everything on the cathedral. So the cathedral wouldn't have been an afterthought. The cathedral would not become an emergency that they have to go and fund from the contingency. The word contingency, what does that mean? So things are not being done the way it should be done because they think they can get away with whatever they intend to do. But there are laws guarding the governing and the financing of this country. And once we follow it, then so we in Parliament, who are supposed to provide an oversight or have an oversight responsibility, are not being told the truth. We are approving things that are used for something else. We never approved in Parliament. We approved the budget. But nowhere in the budget did we approve that the contingency fund will be used in funding a cathedral. Nowhere. Because we had already been told that the cathedral will be funded by the private sector. The best will be a seed money being taken to do that. All of a sudden, it turned out to be something completely different. And then when a new budget is being presented, now the cathedral has now moved to tourism. As I said, I have always, if a cathedral is going to be built, I always thought that the best place for it is to put it, because when you go, you know, elsewhere, all these things are tourist places that people go to. Therefore, there will be there will be revenue from with regards to tourism. Therefore, the cost, therefore, needs to go to the same center. But not in the middle of the road. You don't change your steer from right to left and start driving on the other side of the road if you did not negotiate that from the very beginning.
Okay, but looking at the project itself, do you feel that it will continue naturally, or you feel there may be some challenges?
Well, at the moment, as it stands, it's a financial loss to the state. Because if
really?
If you have sunk taxpayers' money into a project that still looks like a galamsey site, there's no cathedral there, then somebody will have to answer. And these are millions. Look at the amount of money that was paid to the architect and others. Look at the stories that came up afterwards. This is a clear financial loss to the state. If the place is built and is generating some revenue, you can say that you are ring-fencing some, tourism revenue to pay for it. And this is how it should have been looked at in the first place. Then the second question would have been, is the nation in a position to fund such a project now, no matter how brilliant or how good that project is? Maybe not. Maybe let's give it a year or two. I am not against the cathedral. I know the cathedral can generate revenue in terms of tourism, but it has to be done properly. It needs to be explained well. We need to know what we are signing up to. Not in the middle of the road. You go and do fundraising somewhere in the US, even the amount of money that was spent in fundraising. And then you come and build a government for it. And then you come again. You did it the first time, you think you've gotten away with it. Then you come again, now you put it in the budget, you want 80 million for it, giving it to a minister who doesn't actually, when we talk to with all due respect, the Honorable Minister for Tourism, he didn't seem to have a clue. You know, my experience, I haven't worked at the Ministry of Finance, a budget process starts in February, the whole budget process. So as we are talking now, we are in March. So the budget process for 2024 budget has already started. That's if things are being done the same old way. So this stage is where you do the budget hearing, where various ministries, departments, and agencies will bring whatever their programs and then what money they need to fund it. Then discussions will go on until things will be firmed, and in November we will hopefully have a budget. So if we had planned to put this in cathedral, that discussion should have started in February. Not an afterthought, where you put 80 million, that the minister doesn't know anything about it. We have to build a cathedral, and we don't even know if we had allowed the money to be there, who is actually going to have an oversight responsibility of the cathedral secretariat.
Okay, so all of this will be addressed next week.
We will have
The belief is that Ken is inundated with so many questions. Even as we speak, today he was supposed to appear before the House. Well, he failed to show up, and you are adding on more and more questions.
Well,
if you feel that this is okay for him at such a crucial time when many say he should be working on our external debt restructuring and other matters.
From a human, personally, perspective, from a human and health perspective, I don't think, he should go through that. I don't think he should subject himself, no matter how tough you think you are and you think you can take. Look, this is going to have its toll on him in the long run. And he's had some health challenges and all that. And I sit there and ask myself, what is this guy's motivation in continuing to be the finance minister? Look, you've done your best. You can go back to your records where you said before 2020 or before the COVID, you were chalking excellent result. Leave it at that. And let's blame COVID for having caused all the problems after you have produced an excellent result, as you call it. But then to continue to take us down this road where you are making mistakes after mistakes. Look at the pains that he has taken us through this debt exchange program. For what? For 5%? He's going to tell us, I want to know that the pension funds of 27.5 billion and the individual bondholders of 15 billion, when you put together, is 43 billion. What percentage signed up or tendered to this?
That's
and my calculation, I'm telling you, is 5%.
Okay.
2.15 out of 43 billion. That is a complete waste of everybody's time. Unnecessary harassment, causing a former Chief Justice to come and, pick it and all that. And this is what you ended up with.
Okay. But, of course, Ricketts will be subjecting your figures as well to a number of checks. Yes. And obviously...
But I'm putting the figures out there.
Yeah, definitely. You make this available.
I'm sure you do agree that the amount that was in the tender originally...
has been revised. Appears to be revised. Well, appears to be. He needs to explain to us.
Even if you take the revision, let me tell you what the revision, because I factored all that in.
Right.
The revision is that if this thing had been done in January, as they originally announced, it would have been 137 billion. Between January and when the agreement was reached, 7 billion of it has actually matured, which they have paid. That is what brought the...
Interesting dynamics. But we need to go. Thank you, Ricky Sagan, for joining us. And we'll see, definitely. Yeah. Next week, I'm sure you'll be on the floor of the House asking a number of questions. Ricky Hagan is the former Deputy Finance Minister, joining us here on The Pulse. But talking about the economy, my colleague Joseph Akable has been speaking to former Finance Minister Dr. Dufour on recent happenings. Listen.
So we are here to speak to Dr. Kwabena Dufour. He is someone who has quite a deep understanding of the Ghanaian economy, and he's been around, managed it, played various key roles, including being at the regulator at a point in time. And so we'll be tapping into his perspectives on what he makes of the current challenges and the way forward. Doc, thank you so much for agreeing to speak to us.
Thank you for coming too.
I mean, Doc, if you're asked to describe the current state of the Ghanaian economy from your own understanding, how will you describe it?
Thank you. The Ghanaian economy is in crisis as a result of deterioration in the public finances of our nation. Over the years, precisely over the 10 years, we have been accumulating debt, huge debt. The figures released by the Bank of Ghana indicate that the central government debt stands at about 575 billion Ghana cedis. When you add the state-owned enterprise debts, it means our public debt is over 600 billion cedis. The reason why we are in crisis is that over the same period, as a nation, we have not been able to mobilize domestic financial resources. Resources from tax and non-tax revenue. In our public finances, domestic resource mobilization has no substitute. You don't pay interest on this. When you're able to grow your domestic revenue, you are safeguarding your national sovereignty, because you're not going to be involved in reckless borrowing, especially foreign borrowing, which may endanger your national sovereignty. Right now we have that problem. We are begging for debt forgiveness. You understand?
Yeah. I mean, we'll come a bit more on the debt forgiveness, but I mean, just a couple of years ago, especially the COVID period, we even recorded positive growth. I mean, the economy not too long ago was doing quite well. Beyond the failure to marshal domestic revenue, do you think there's something that we did wrong directly, or what we could have done differently that could have averted where we find ourselves now, the crisis you talk about?
No, you see, having accumulated foreign debt of $15 billion from the Eurobond market within 8 years, between 2013 and 2021, it's not only the size of the debt, but the period, 8 years. It's a short period for a nation to accumulate such a huge debt. You made a point The servicing of this foreign debt in hard currency has been a problem, because we are not exporting goods and services which earn us enough revenue in hard currency to be able to service this particular huge foreign debt. What happened was that we were borrowing from the same market to pay the interest on this huge foreign debt. And when we were asked to stop, we had a huge problem. And don't forget, the history of world debt crisis, the history indicates that it starts from foreign debt, always not domestic debt. So the 15 billion within 8 years has been a huge challenge for Ghana.
I mean, what value would you put on the influence of external factors? I mean, we've heard a refrain about Russia, Ukraine. I mean, what value would you place on that?
That's what that such a big war will affect all nations dealing with Ukraine. But if you look at other African countries, they were able to manage the situation. You understand? Especially by 15 of the African states registered single-digit inflation over the same period, when ours hovers around 50%. So there must be a problem domestically. Okay? Yeah.
I mean, if you're asked to, place values on it in terms of maybe 50-50, 60-40, I mean, the chunk of the challenge, will it be domestic or external?
Now look at the drivers of inflation in Ghana. About 10 drivers are all food related. You understand? We are unable to produce enough rice. Basic food, fruits. And they are not Ukraine war related. I don't believe that. We are not producing enough. Period. As a nation, we are not working hard enough. We are not producing hard enough. Food production should not be a problem for us. You understand? Yeah.
I mean, in the midst of all these challenges, government took the view that going to seek support from the IMF was what they wanted to do. I mean, even though quite earlier they had indicated clearly that we're not going to go back to the IMF. I mean, you have been at the finance ministry before. Assuming you were there at this point in time when you realized that, okay, this is how the books look. We are indebted. We can't, our balance of payment doesn't look too good. And cabinets, you're in cabinet and they're asking for advice. I mean, would the IMF had been an option you would have suggested that government should go in for?
We have there before, but when we were there, we focused on domestic resource mobilization. We cut down government expenditure. During our time, for example, we reduced the ministries, the MDAs, from 27 to 23. So, reduction or cut in government expenditure was a major, policy. You must always balance your revenue with expenditure. When you are unable to pay your bills, we say that you have debt unsustainability. You will be forced to seek support from outside. But when you're able to pay your bills, able to balance your revenue with expenditure, you will not go out looking for support. The situation we are in, we had to look for support because over the years, we were not able to do that. We were not living within our means, you understand? It's not how much you earn, but how you're able to manage the income you make. We as a nation, we appear to be living not within our means, but above. That's a problem.
I mean, as at November, our debt totaling was about $43.9 billion. And one of the things government is trying to do with the IMF program is to attempt to restructure these debts. And so far, I mean, a chunk of the focus has been on the domestic debt restructuring. I mean, government has been criticized, especially because of the new bonds they try to trade for the old ones and push the maturity date a bit back. What's your reading of that particular transaction?
See, there was a contract between government and individuals who went in for the bond. In the midst, if you want to change the contract, you should start with negotiations with the people. You understand? For example, I have an interest in an insurance company. There's a contract between the insurance company and the clients. You have to insure your car for the insurance company. That when it's an accident, they should be able to restore you, give enough to cover. The way it is, if government, because of difficulty, is giving them new bond and not be paying enough interest, when there's a problem with you because your car is involved in an accident, what will happen between you and the insurance company? They may say, we don't have money to pay, but you have a contract with them, not the government. What would you do if you find yourself in this situation? So there should have been lots of consultations, discussions for the two parties, government and
the quantum of the domestic debt was a little over 100 billion. Eventually, when the government closed the process, they said that it had come down a bit because of trading in some of the bonds, among others. I mean, if you were to be at the helm of affairs targeting which bonds to restructure and which ones not to, I mean, topical amongst them has been the individual bondholders and the pensioner bondholders. Would those two have been something that you would have, I mean, in simple terms, put your hands over and try to convince them in these talks that you are suggesting?
You see, we seem to be talking about the debt treatment. I don't believe that's a problem facing us. Our problem goes beyond debt treatment. You understand? How did you get there in the first place? So we, the managers of the economy, I say we because I've been there before, we, the managers of the economy, we have created a problem. And those who had nothing to do with the problem have been asked to solve the problem. Is that fair?
I mean, government says in simple terms, I owe you, but I can't meet the commitments. Something must give.
No. They could have done it in a different way. Call all of us. There has been a problem with the management of the economy. We borrow so much money to manage the economy. Something has gone wrong. What can we do together? Understand?
I mean,
there should have been a lot of consultations, discussions about the problem, so that we buy in. We should ask for our buying into the problem. What can you do to help us? Not take it or leave it.
I mean, was the attempt to, deal with the pensioner bondholders, for instance, do you think that was a viable move? I mean, currently we are being told that they wanted total exemption. Eventually, just a couple of days ago, the finance minister has now written to them after the agitations and everything to say that, okay, I've granted the exemption now. But, I mean, it's still voluntary. Those who want to participate have already participated, and those who didn't have also stayed away from it. I mean, what was the whole exercise good in itself? Was it a good move? Because there are some who hold the view that those are very vulnerable groups that government should not have touched at all, especially because they are people who have worked many years, and that is what they are basically living on the coupons.
Yeah, if we had cut down the size of government, we would have made some savings there. instead of touching the pensioners' bonds, of course, not much, you understand? A cut in the size of government would have made enough savings to cover what we are looking for from the pensioners. You don't think so?
I mean, that would have brought down, in terms of our expenditure, that would have brought it down.
Exactly. Bring down the expenditure, make some savings, so that you don't touch these old people whose pensions is so dear to them. We had a workshop years ago on the pension of those who had worked in the public sector. You better believe, about 53% of the people don't earn more than 500 cedis a month. The pensioners' issue is a very sad issue that must be looked at. Those who have worked in the public sector and are on pension, not more than about 53% of them don't earn more than 500 Ghana cedis about 2 years ago when we did this exercise. So it's very pathetic dealing with pensioners, especially those who have worked so hard in the public sector.
I mean, for about 7 days, I mean, we covered it extensively. You had the, I mean, I'm sure some of them were people that you even worked with in government. Dr. Edward Anentwi was at the Securities and Exchange Commission.
Yeah.
The former Chief Justice.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure you saw those visuals of being at your former office.
Yeah.
I mean, when you saw those visuals, what was running through your mind?
I feel sad. Very sad. We also have information, data on how much they take home every month from their pension. Very small. Very few take 2,000 cedis a month. Very few of them. And some of them work for 35 years, but they've been almost 40 years for the nation. So if we have to cut down government expenditure to save them, I would do that.
I mean, for now, I mean, we did a period of attempting to get some of them to sign on to the bonds. Some of the bonds matured, but government said because it was still doing the processes of subscribing people and the invitation was still on, they've decided now that on February 21, the matured ones that they couldn't pay, they will now be redeeming those ones. I mean, would you say that at least the point that we've reached now, no matter how difficult it was for us to get there, is satisfactory as far as you are concerned?
Yeah, government has shown commitment that they will pay when they mature. I pray that we'll be able to make enough money by cutting down the size of government, right? So that we'll make some savings, raise some cash to pay them during maturity. I like the way the chairman of the Finance Committee put up the case, Cook Watson. I agree with him. The domestic debt exchange by itself will not be able to restore the challenges to the economy, will not recover or bring about any recovery unless we look at the whole system. For example, cutting down the size of government, making sure that the rate of inflation goes down. When we have inflation hovering around 50% now, the purchasing power of individuals and companies is going down. You know that. We have to also match that with aggressive domestic resource mobilization. The main objective of the domestic debt exchange was to reduce the interest burden on the country's debt. which means we must all aim at making some savings in the system. Government must begin to think of making savings. The investors, businesses must begin to think about that.
And be sure to watch a playback of that interaction with Dr. Dufour on all of our social media platforms. For now, the Ghana Police Service says it is running a special search operation which is underway to locate over 25 individuals involved in impersonation. And of course, they were impersonating prominent persons, including ministers of state, members of parliament, heads of government institutions and corporate entities on social media. Already 12 suspects are in the custody of the police after investigations identified 973 fake social media accounts created by the suspects in the names of these prominent persons and corporate entities. But this afternoon, we're asking that question. How can Ghana effectively check impersonation and other forms of cyber attacks, especially for young ones using the internet? Joining us now is Frederick Stanley Lane. He's a Fulbright specialist, and also Awadem Amenya is the Executive Director for Child Online Africa. Welcome, gentlemen and lady, to our studios. And of course, let's welcome the visitor first of all, because who has always been with us. Frederick, you are learning of this news, obviously, but it's not new, knowing that the internet, of course, is everywhere in the world, and these issues of impersonations, attacks online, and other forms do really happen around the world. For you, how do you feel that the country can effectively check some of these happenings?
Well, I think that's very well stated. There's absolutely no question that the minute you connect to the internet, you expose yourself to all of these problems, regardless of where you are. And it's difficult because the internet offers so much in the way of opportunity. To answer your specific question, I think that the best solution is education, because we need to make sure that people are aware of the risks that are out there and the steps that they can take to protect themselves. And it goes for government ministers as well as for children.
Is the number striking to you, 973?
I actually am surprised it's that low, to be honest with you. And I don't think that this will be the last time that government officials or regular Ghanaian citizens deal with this. It is an ongoing threat.
We'll talk about the solutions shortly, but for you, are people really conscious about what goes on online, even on Facebook? Because from the story, we understand that huge sums of monies have been taken from these unsuspecting members of the public.
I would say that I don't think they're taking the issue seriously, because there has been a lot of conversation around these issues. The Cybersecurity Authority has also been giving advisories and all of that. So for a number of people to be swindled by these same people, and I don't see their strategy changing. It comes with those funny stuff. So I feel that people are not paying attention, or people are taking things for granted, too much for granted, for them to be taking that way. Because if the conversation is about the fact that, okay, you are connecting and you are connecting to the wider world, therefore critical thinking is very necessary for you. You need to think before you click something. You need to think before you react to something. All of that is going on. So what will make you believe that a public official or a minister will be asking you for money in order to post you or give you an opportunity? Right. And again, earlier on, we've had this conversation before where we're talking about verification marks on most of the office ministers' accounts.
The blue tick, right?
The blue tick, yes. So that is also one of the things that people should look out for, not necessarily the fake ones or the clone ones, but the original ones are needed. And sometimes it's not very difficult to even place a call to the so-called organization in order to verify whether there's something like that going on. I saw one, you know, these things are posted mostly when a page is boosted of an information and most people are interacting with the page. Then someone comes in and throws in things like that. I saw one which was to the effect that the Ghana forces, if you need a
recruitment into the armed forces,
you should follow me, that kind of thing. I saw it and I was taken aback, so I placed a call to somebody then. I said, is there anything like that? They said, no. Okay. I said, do the needful. That's how it works. So we all need to be each other's keeper. When you see it somewhere, get someone informed.
You definitely
just
have
so
to say
action
something.
will be taken.
But for you, Frederick, what should we be laying the emphasis on, regulation or individual awareness?
I always think it comes down to individual responsibility first, because it's your money, after all, that you're protecting. So if you're not taking reasonable steps to protect yourself, the critical thinking, using common sense, then you're exposing yourself to this risk. That being said, I think that corporations and governments have an obligation to play a role in this. You talked about the blue tick, for instance. Right. What do we do when a corporation starts to change the value of a blue tick? Right. What about the fact that someone can go in now and buy a blue tick and now they look official? So there's an example of a corporation making it less safe for the people that it's supposedly serving. So I would encourage government regulation to address that corporations like Twitter or WhatsApp or Facebook have a financial obligation and a legal obligation to help protect their users, and particularly the older users, who I think are most at risk for this.
Are you leaving out the government agencies as well?
Well, no, that's where the regulation comes in, that they absolutely should be playing a role in this. It gets a little bit tricky in terms of how you balance the potential speech and political impact, because you don't necessarily want the government regulating that. But that's different from the financial protection piece.
So going forward, let's try and identify some of the ways by which the individuals can easily spot disinformation and some of these items online. For you, which one is key? Because you've been watching our space a lot. What do you see often?
It has more to do with there's misinformation and there's disinformation.
Information, right.
So until we are able to know what makes an authentic site, website, or information, it will be very difficult to tell whether this is what it is or that. But I'm also of the view that if we do a bit of common sensing, for want of a better word.
It may sound offensive, but
yes,
okay.
But then we will be doing ourselves a lot of good, in a sense that you don't see something and just jump onto it, and so you are doing your bit. But again,
but sometimes it looks so real. I mean, it's very believable.
So the answer there, my response is, slow down. There's so much about the internet that drives us to move quickly. And the biggest safety feature you can impose upon yourself is taking the time to think. Because if you're just in a rush and you panic, or you actually think someone's taking your money when they're really not yet, if you slow down, you can usually catch it, because it just won't make sense. And it will look wrong. Usually, for instance, text messages I almost never respond to, because very few of the businesses I work with communicate in that fashion. But then with the emails, you can, if you look at the return email address, you will often see that it's something that makes no sense whatsoever. And that's an important check.
But the threat is becoming much more of a danger to the young ones, especially using our internet. And you've been very much concerned about that. Child Online Africa, it's part of the campaign you've been running, digital citizenship. I recall you calling me over the whole concept and all of that. I mean, is it the responsibility of parents to ensure that the young ones using the internet are safe, or how do we really go about it?
You know, that question is a tough one, because we wouldn't say it's the parents who should be training that much. The parents will train. However, everybody and anybody in the society has a role to play. Assuming a parent is not educated enough to play that role, would we want to still expect that parent to play the role? No. So we want the teacher to do that backstopping role. Even a Sunday school teacher or a mosque teacher should be able to mainstream safety or citizenship conversation in every program they do, because that is our life now. We can't wish it away. So we have to adapt a way of getting the message across, which is why we focus on language. we focus on age, we focus on maturation, and also if you are not at a level where you could understand higher level of English, we bring it down or take it to the local language for you to understand. And until we all become responsible netizens, it will be really, really difficult for us to avert some of these irresponsible actions coming from predators or whoever, because sexual exploitation is something else that we haven't even touched base with. Yes. Which is also very critical, because most of these young people are being groomed every now and then, and they are taking advantage of. Adults are also undergoing grooming without knowing, thinking they're having fun. So how then do we have that comprehensive or holistic discussion in order to forestall some of these happenings? It's the reason why even Dr. Lane is with us this month to help us put together a form of a framework. Because mind you, even in classrooms, during the lockdown, most of the teachers connected with the children via WhatsApp, via Zoom and all. But then after the Zoom classes, some of them went further by interacting with these children privately in their private WhatsApp chats and things. How can a teacher position himself or herself in a way that will not lead him or her into any accusation of sexual exploitation, misconduct? It's the reason why Dr. Lane is here to help us come up with
and Doc, we're excited about that because you're part of a group of 400 experts moving from the US into all parts of the world, trying to exchange ideas on how we can create such a framework that we're talking about. So where are you starting off from, and what do you hope to achieve at the end of the day?
Well, that's a great question. I've been working on this area of cyber safety and cybersecurity now for about 20 years. And I've written a number of books on it. In terms of my visit here to Ghana, I'm starting from the perspective of someone who's really hoping to learn about the culture, learn about the structure within the country, and then in partnership with AWO, putting together resources that will help organizations and school communities develop what I refer to as a culture of cyber safety. And this is referencing AWO's approach to a holistic attack on digital safety, because we have to really make sure that everybody in the society, from the government on down to the parents, understand the importance of digital citizenship, online safety, preventing sexual grooming, and so forth. So we have seen the impact of internet culture. Now we need to develop a different culture that is more protective of children.
But are you taking the buy-in of those who are within the country itself? Because the belief is that, well, the CSOs, the experts such as you are always talking your language, you know. There are certain terms that you use that the average person would not be aware of. So are you making this friendly so that the average person out there is able to follow and participate in that program?
I'll give you two answers to that. So number one, yes, because I go out and I talk to parent groups in the United States and in Canada about these issues. But I'm even able to explain technology to lawyers. And if you can do that, you can make it approachable to almost anyone. So yes, a good part of the work I do is figuring out a way to take the technical language and the, the sort of jargon, you would say, of technology and make it approachable for people. And we do get some help, I think, some very valuable assistance from children, because of course they're in that culture. And one of the goals is to really make them partners in their own safety. I'm a big believer in figuring out ways for children to help their elders better understand how this technology works, because they understand it so well.
Okay, we need to go. Awo, for you, what message do you have for parents out there and, I mean, other groups that may be willing to partner, yourself and Frederick, to further this cause?
Right. So I would say that we open to teaming up with other people in this endeavor, and we would also be having a fireside chat with parents. So people should look out for such a Zoom invitation and join us as much as possible. And then there are some schools we'll be visiting as well, and then other state agencies that we'll be having discussion with. So we'll see how best we can collectively have a frame for Ghana and other African countries to leverage on when it comes to digital literacy and citizenship.
Amazing. Frederick, I'll give you the last take on this.
That's very kind of you. It is, number one, first and foremost, an honor to be here. There's a tremendous amount of work to be done. It is just a pleasure for me to have a chance to work with Aho, who's obviously a huge leader in this area, and we'll see what we can do.
Indeed, and the future is exciting. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us, and they'll be back definitely. We'll be interacting with them some more. You're watching The Pulse. We'll be right back after this break. Please stay. And the National Health Insurance Authority has set up a committee to regulate tariff regimes of private insurance companies in Ghana due to the lack of uniformity in the tariff structure. That's according to the Director of Private Health Insurance at the National Health Insurance Authority, Hudu Issa. Speaking at the 10th anniversary of the Apex Health Insurance Company here in Accra, Mr. Issa revealed that the uniform tariff regime, when implemented, will go a long way to improve the operations of private health insurance companies, as their services are indispensable.
Private health insurance companies face diverse challenges in Ghana. Topmost of the challenges is the issue of the varied tariff regulations. This has put them at the mercy of private health providers in terms of tariff regulation. The Director of Private Health Insurance at the National Health Insurance Authority, Hudu Issa, in an interview with JoyNews, indicated that the Health Ministry has established a committee to oversee private health insurance companies in Ghana's tariff structure.
Currently, private health insurance companies, the outstanding challenges I see them facing is what we call the tariff regime they are using. Now, all private health insurance companies, they are at the mercy of the health provider. As and when the health provider feels that I should increase tariffs, they increase. So that is one of the major challenges that the industry is facing. And so the authority as a regulator is venturing into regulating this space for the private health insurance company. We are at a stage where a committee is formed by our indefatigable Chief Executive, Honorable Dr. Bernard Okuboy. The committee's mandate is to formulate and develop uniform tariff structure for the private health insurance schemes.
He says Apex has greatly aided the National Health Insurance Program.
Apex is a private commercial health insurance scheme. The government is not oblivious of the fact that governments of countries cannot attain the universal health coverage all alone unless a room is created for private partnership. So Apex is contributing in attaining the universal health coverage.
The Chief Executive Officer of Apex Health Insurance, Godwin Fafasi Chofie Tokwenyi, said the outfit is aimed at working to make Ghana healthier.
The main objective for any health insurance business like ours is to make sure that we secure healthcare services for our insured members, and which we'll continue to do. And like our team is working together to make Ghana healthier, which we've been doing for the past 10 years. I think for now we have a number of hospital projects. We have plans presented to the board to acquire shares in some existing facilities and also to set up new ones. Also to expand our telemedicine and also our medicine delivery program, which is going on well. It brings convenience to our members. You can imagine sitting at home and then you have a prescription, and then you have to go from one place to another to get such medication, and then at the click of a button, the medication is delivered to you in 30 minutes, 45 minutes, without you having to go through stress in trying to get this medicine.
Some clients and staff of Apex share their experiences.
I'll start from the staff, very energetic, very talented, interesting characters, contributing to the growth as we speak now, and it's very interesting to see us, working together to make the company grow. So it's been very wonderful.
It has been an amazing journey so far. We joined in 2015, and all through to 2013 we've had prompt services. We haven't had any issues with any of the healthcare providers. Prompt payments when we have to make our reclaims. it has just been an amazing journey.
Apex Health Insurance, the multi-award-winning insurance company, has contributed immensely to the national insurance scheme in a relatively short time. Jesse Sawabuafo's reports read to you.
And our Deputy Chief Executive Officer of the Volta River Authority, Dr. Stella Ejenim Boateng, has advised the youth to portray the right attitude and value in their search for career opportunities. According to her, the youth hate to be reprimanded and corrected without taking into consideration the need to inculcate good behavior and values in their workplaces. She spoke at a career-based event at the Heritage Christian College that aligning millennials to the world of work.
The kind of graduates that the universities are turning out are not meeting industry standards.
As more youth venture into the world of work, there is always a need to support them to portray the right values and attitudes. As a way of equipping them with such skills, the Heritage Christian College organized a career-oriented event dubbed Aligning the Millennials to the World of Work. Speaking at the event, Deputy Chief Executive Officer in charge of services at the Volta River Authority, Dr. Stella Ejenim Boateng, advised the youth on the necessary steps to take when entering the world of work.
The competition when it comes to job seeking, it's more keener than it used to be. More brilliant people are also, being turned out, just as yourselves. And therefore, if you do not have certain skills, certain abilities, and you do not have the right attitude, you do not understand what happens in the world of work. You may call yourself a graduate, you may parade all the degrees, but you may still be frustrated because you do not know how to even sell yourself, package yourself, sell yourself, and get that dream job that you have always looked for.
She also advised the youth to embrace networking and mentorship as they are the best tools to learn and have access to good career opportunities.
Networking is a very, very important investment in personal development. And there are various networking opportunities for the youth. Like I say, you came out of school, you have a pool of people who are, let's say, old students. You may be in your old students platform, not just your classmates. You have senior people who are there. How are you getting involved in activities, let's say, of the old school, where you know that you meet some of these experienced people who may have attended the same school as you, for you to even have the opportunity to meet them face to face, and then try to ask questions, get answers to some of your burning issues, and get them to even mentor you. That is one way, from a young person's point of view. That is a first point of call. When you get into work, it's important that you get into professional associations. There are chartered institutes of this, chartered institutes of that, and these are professional institutions where you don't only have to charter, but you need to make sure that you are part of the association's development programs. If they are running development programs, attend. If they are running conferences, attend. If there are public lectures, attend. Because in all of these, you always pick at least something, one nugget, that will help you, and you'll be able to connect with people.
Patrons of the event also shared their views on the initiative.
The program was a good program because we were actually waiting for such a program like this, and the opportunity came, so we needed to involve ourselves as students of the college.
Personally, I've learned a lot. Most of the time I used to tell myself my name is Comfort, so I need to always feel comfortable. But then she made me understand that in order to be successful, you shouldn't feel too comfortable. And I was really touched by that particular word. So, in fact, I've learned a lot.
Events such as this, a public lecture, will always have a great impact because as millennials as we are, the theme portrayed, a lot of the times we do stuff, we follow the crowd, and we do things that really, if you leave us to our fate, we wouldn't be doing them. And so when we have the opportunity to be able to hear things like we've heard today, you always be thankful for such opportunities.
Linda Darko's report read to you.
And that's all we have for you here on The Pulse. I am Blessed Sogah. Log on to myjoyonline.com next.